keeps popping out of my hair. My hair is stronger than it is.
It's your main problem, is because you hug it underneath the jacket like you do your normal.
Yeah.
That's your problem. Or issue.
We're not going to talk about our problems.
Yeah, we're talking about my issues. Okay.
Let's chat. Let's pray together. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, Friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashai, Swami Sri Yukteswar, beloved Guru, Paramahansa Yoganandaji, Saints of all religions, Sri Patanjali, infuse us with your wisdom, opening our hearts to your presence, enlighten us, guide us, bless us with your wisdom. Om. Peace. Amen. Let's be still for just a few minutes. Enter the door of the heart into the temple, the sacred temple of the divine presence within us. Feel that presence in the heart, and then offer the heart's natural love up to the point between the eyebrows at the feet of the Masters, into the light of God. Let's meditate in silence now. Let's affirm together, I awake in thy light.
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 I am joyful, I am free.
I am joyful, I am free.
I awake in thy light.
I awake in thy light.
Om. Shanti. Amen. Turn this on. I want you to know how disappointed I am. I only got one question from Karen Sherman. Fortunately, I made up a few of my own. Just had to do that. Thank you. So tonight, we're going to try to go to about 8:20, so we can keep making progress, and then cut it off and open it up the way we had proposed 2 weeks ago after the last class, and kind of see how that goes. And I actually thought Murli would be back from India. I know he'll be here for Thursday night class, so I'd like to, did you bring your book? I'd like to ask Karen Sherman to step up to the podium over there, and we're going to ask Karen to read the Sanskrit. No, just teasing, Karen. Yeah.
2-1.
So we'll start with 2-1. So what we'll do, Karen, tonight, since we don't have Sanskrit, we'll have you read it once, and then we'll be silent for about a minute, and then close with reading it again. Sound good? Okay. Before we start, are there someone said there are announcements. Where's the friend Shanti?
I'd like to propose, well, we could do them now. I think people are here.
But we, in order for our viewers elsewhere, can you use Karen's little thing over there? You need to talk in a microphone, or people out there won't hear you. Yeah, you can just pull it off of there if you like. Here you go.
I just wanted to send around this clipboard. If you haven't answered the email about whether you're attending the Kriya initiation on Saturday night, November 9th, it's coming right up. It would really help us if you'd write your name and say yes or no if you're coming. If you've already answered the email, you don't have to, because I'll have it that way. But I'm sending that around. And then I was going to send around a sign-up sheet for the international dinner, but we're actually taking a waiting list now for the international dinner. So if you would like to come to the dinner, and you can let me know, and I'll put you on the waiting list.
Great. Okay. So shall we start?
Can you hear me?
Are you ready?
Ice cream cone.
Get real close and snuggly.
So, book Sadhana Pada 2-1.
Come up closer, please.
2-1.
Perfect.
Accepting pain as purification, study of the scriptures and introspection, openness to the divine will and guidance, and acceptance of them. These constitute the practice of yoga. Accepting pain as purification, study of the scriptures and introspection, openness to the divine will and guidance, and acceptance of them, these constitute the practice of yoga.
I think in these first few verses there may be some overlap with last time. I didn't actually write down where we ended. This stanza commentary begins with Swami's comments on Hatha Yoga. And I don't know quite what frame of mind he was in at the time, but and it's part of our study group, so we can talk about that. There's more to it than what he wrote, but still, it is something that is always being addressed here at Ananda and around the world as more people become conscious of the fact that there's more to Hatha Yoga than meets the eye. And so that's what he addresses there. I know in the study of Hatha, there are some references made to Patanjali, but as Gandhev writes in the foreword to the whole book, it's a little bit of a stretch to glean Hatha from Patanjali, because it's not really what he's talking about, but yoga is yoga. So when we come to our discussion thing, that'll be maybe a good subject to open up for more discussion. So I'm going to sort of whiz past that. But it does come up a lot, and so we hear the term spiritual yoga here at Ananda. We have people coming and they've woken up from the fitness center to the fact that there's more to it. So, in fact, it's good news, not bad news. It really is something in my lifetime. I've seen a continued surge of interest or awakening to the fact that there's more to Hatha than otherwise. Of course, the Christians, the fundamentalists, make hay with that sort of thing, as does the Vatican, but that's their problem, not ours. So, the other thing that comes up very much on the path of yoga, more than anything else I'm aware of, is the issue or question around health. So if all this yoga business is good for your health, why is this or that yogi troubled with health problems? Those of us who have watched Swami Kriyananda's life, we've seen that throughout his life he's been challenged by all sorts of health things. But you can turn the coin around, and in his case as just an example, and see what an incredible outpouring of creativity and energy he's been able to show in his life, despite the challenges that would take most people out, would have taken most people out of the body years ago, what to mention out of the running for anything meaningful in one's outer life. So he does address that, and it's part of the acceptance of pain. And it's also going to weave in through tonight, depending how far we get in the law of karma. These stanzas here very much towards as far as we might go tonight, very much deal with karma. And so there are some very interesting statements that he makes about that, but we'll come back to that. He says, pain is certain. Pain, that was the Buddha's great life, wasn't it? The cognition that life is suffering, or as Master loved to quote Krishna, and we've never found, Swami quotes Krishna, Arjuna, get away from my ocean of suffering. But you know something? I haven't found a Gita yet that actually has that stanza in it. So Swami, when he was doing the essence of the Gita, he just scratched his head. He couldn't, where is that stanza? Well, it's nowhere to be found. But Master quoted it just, in time and time again. So Swami said, well, it must be in the Gita somewhere, or some version of it. If you're a scholar, and I'm not, and I don't think much of scholarly stuff personally, but scholars will tell you that Patanjali too, the Yoga Sutras, as the Gita, as the Bible, is a concatenation of different contributions over time. When we get to the Eightfold Path in the sessions ahead, Morley and I have talked about the fact that the Eightfold Path was taught or in stanzas of far more ancient scriptures than Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. Master said that Patanjali codified, in the declining yugas, codified ancient wisdom in this very clinical style of his. He was an avatar too, we're told, so it's not that he had to rely on his scholarly buddies, but nonetheless the great ones down through the ages in the sciences and the arts and in religion and so forth all give credit to the wisdom passed down, as we should always as well. So I don't know what that had to do with anything, but there it is. Pain is certain. He talks about our choice and how our only response, and later he'll talk about free will, we might talk about it too in our study questions, that our real choice is, we can't choose our karma. We already did that. Our real choice is how we respond to it. And getting out of it is not really the issue so much as dealing with it and in what state of consciousness we deal with it. It's not freedom from pain. It's there it is. It's transcendence. It's freedom from attachment to pain. That is the core thing. Okay, let me just check my notes. Okay, good. I'm good. Padma? Yeah. Well, we talked about Kriya Yoga last time, and the issue I brought up about Kriya in this stanza, so I won't repeat that.
Okay.
So shall we have Karen or Padma, do you want to add something?
I don't want to add anything.
Okay, so shall Karen move to stanza 3?
Yeah.
Okay.
There are 5 obstacles: ignorance, egoism, attachments, aversions, and clinging to bodily life. there are 5 obstacles: ignorance, egoism, attachments, aversions, and clinging to bodily life.
Okay, how much time do you have? Those are 5 big ones. They sort of take up volumes and volumes, but I'm just going to touch on them briefly. Starting with ignorance. Am I not on?
You're good. Keep talking.
Okay. There we are. So, Master would often interchange the word sin and ignorance in his descriptions. That is to say, what Christians call sin, he would define as really just being ignorance. It's the mistakes that we make by looking at life through the eyes of what I call the ego lens of the telescope instead of the soul lens of the telescope. So in ignorance, we're talking mostly in relation to our sort of identification with the body and personality, and we see life in its limited form. And in our soul nature, we see life in its connected form to all divinity. And so if we're looking through that ego lens, through the ignorance lens, we're going to make a lot of mistakes because we're having a sort of twisted perception. Our glasses are not, they're not the right prescription. We're not seeing things as they really are. And so our egos then have a lot of suffering, which is what was alluded to in the prior stanza. Now for egoism, of course, massive subject. We just keep bringing things back to our own self-identifications. Towards the end of his life, Kriyananda liked to talk a lot about ourselves as being bundles of self-identification, self-preoccupation. And so ego transcendence is, of course, where this is pointing us to. And I just brought with me, maybe Karen could actually hand these out for me, but these are some of the ways of ego transcendence that Swamiji pointed to in Sadhu Beware. Can you hand those out to a few
They have
folks?
individual names on them. Make sure they get theirs.
Your ego and your ego. There's not one for everyone, so just sort of randomly give them to people. And maybe the first one who got one can stand up and loudly say theirs. Steph? Can you stand up and say yours?
If someone scolds you for something you didn't do, you may see some good reason for letting them know that you're not guilty. If it doesn't really matter who did it, however, you will gain more spiritually if you say nothing. Challenging.
Really simple, but really challenging if you've ever tried it. I have. Very challenging. Jane, you have one?
When people fail to credit you for something you did and did well, say nothing. In your heart, however, give all the credit to God.
Strokes, anybody? Yeah. Do you have one, Bruce?
I do. When someone else gets the credit for something you've done, don't look for a way of letting people know where the credit really belongs. It would be natural enough for you to do that. You needn't even consider it a fault. Still, don't make too much of it. You'll find much greater freedom in your heart if you mentally give all the credit to God.
Can you relate?
All the time.
Haley?
If others try to boss you around and it doesn't really matter to you one way or another, why not simply go along with the game? To do so will increase your sense of inner freedom.
I mean, it's so simple, but it's so hard. Who else has one?
Never try without some good and definite reason to justify your actions, ideas, or accomplishments. Whatever you've done, give it mentally to God.
Don't justify. Big one. Yes, next.
I can read one. Can I trade these or something? Oh. when someone has a good idea that you've already had, it will help you in the practice of humility to tell yourself, it's the idea that counts, not the person who had it. Reply simply, therefore, that's a good idea, let's give it a try.
Very practical. Another one, Randa?
Yes. The important thing is that any thought of yourself should be offered up instantly to God. Spiritual liberation comes not in one grand, overreaching leap, but by little increments of which the points I've suggested will take you soaring. Paramahansa Yogananda suggested that we memorize his point Samadhi and repeat it daily. In essence, he meant also that we should always dwell on the thought that our true reality is infinite. Make the state of omnipresence your constant affirmation. That's another hard one.
So the next time we try to justify ourselves or feel slighted because someone else is taking credit for our idea or whatever it might be, just think about samadhi. Yeah. Yeah?
What does it mean to really justify yourself?
To try to explain yourself. I mean, I often tell the story about what happened to me where Swami was scolding me for something that I could tell by the way he was talking, I thought he didn't know the whole story, So I tried to fill in the story, and his response was, don't justify, or you'll never understand. And so we try to say, oh, but it was this way, so I wasn't really at fault, or, we try to explain ourselves away when in fact we make mistakes. Yes. Who's next?
Try not to tell stories of which the main point is to make you look good.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now we know who the others are too. Jan?
Don't let your mind play with the thought of where and how you yourself fit into any picture. Don't toy with flattery by entertaining it even lightly in your mind. Repeat sternly any thought of self-importance, self-praise, self-justification, and blame. This subject is important for you as your own salvation. For your spiritual liberation depends upon release from ego consciousness.
If we listen really carefully in daily life, we'll see how often we refer things back to ourselves. Somebody tells you a story and you remember how, oh yes, you experienced something like that, or where do you fit into that picture? And then you're not really listening to their story.
Swami used to love this. It's all just a joke, but he said, yeah, I remember one time I was with a group of people and, men and women and stuff, and he said, yeah, he said out loud to everybody, women take everything personally, and then a woman piped up, but I don't. It was Asha. She was just joking, but but that's a good example.
We refer everything back to our little selves. You know, we can't help it. It's just sort of what that little self tries to do. Yes, Masha.
Dennis's little self got this one, but he shoved it off on me because it's long. When people praise you for any reason, don't accept their praise in your heart. Don't say ungraciously, for example, it was nothing. That would mean deprecating their good taste and common sense. In fact, it would mean answering a compliment with an insult. Thank them sincerely instead, but then give the credit to God. Do so in words if you like, but much more importantly, give Him the credit in your heart. Tell yourself, God is the doer. People may remind you if you say that to them, yes, but it takes an instrument of God's will to do what you've done so skillfully. True enough, but what does that really mean? Do you want to pride yourself on being a good screwdriver or hammer? Move on to some other subject and be particularly careful in your heart not to accept the compliment.
Okay. John.
Never belittle anyone. View all with respect. Release from your heart any desire you may feel to outshine others, or even to shine at all in whatever you do. Do the best you can, always, but give the fruits of your efforts to God.
It's important to understand that second part. You know, we're still doing the best we can. We're just not trying to take the credit for it. Any others out there? Is that it? Well, I just wanted to, one more.
Laugh with others, but never at them.
Okay. Got that? Got that? So, I just wanted to give, just some concrete thought to this idea of ego transcendence, or as it's in this context of Patanjali, the way ego traps us. I'm always talking about how to get out of the darn thing. So the other thing he talks about is attachments and aversions. And mostly he talks about that in relation to people, or explains that in relation to people, because typically it's people that affect us the most. Rarely is it inanimate objects. It's people who hurt our feelings, or it's people who make us feel good, friends and so on. And so the bonds that we have with people are the attachments that are hardest to break. I remember once, many years ago, one of our friends at Ananda Village lost her father. He passed away, and she was, it was a big loss to her personally. She'd been close with him. And Swami Kriyananda was consoling her and said, the bonds that we have with our parents are often the strongest bonds for us to transcend, to break, because there's the most attachment that's there. And so, friends, family, close ones. And then you have the opposite, of course, the aversions, the people that repel you, the people that hurt you, the people that are unpleasant to be around. And of course in yoga we want to find that middle ground, that even-mindedness, where neither the sort of intimate personal closeness or the repulsion that we have towards people affect our calmness, our peace of mind, where it's the same. We love deeply with the love of God impersonally, but deeply each and every one, even the ones that hurt us in time. We want to be able to attain that even-mindedness. And then lastly, the attachment to the physical body. He describes how, for the fact that we know on some level of our being that the soul is infinite, that we have this sense that we can never die. And so we have a concern of death, we have a fear of death because we see bodies. Our bodies die, our egos die, our bodies, the soul identified with the body seems to die. But on another level we understand that the soul lasts way beyond the body. And so, but we live in this, the fear that comes when we learn that we have a terminal illness perhaps, or the concern of leaving the body and leaving friends and family. All of those things are very, very real and very powerful obstacles in our path towards liberation. Even the masters, in Autobiography of a Yogi, when Sri Yukteswar first heard that he would be about to leave his body, or when Lahiri first heard that he was about to leave his body, his whole rib cage shook, didn't it? You could hear it. It was like a rattle, just adjusting to that thought of departure, and that's a master. And so this is one of the great obstacles that we try to overcome on the spiritual path. I want to go on now to stanzas 4 and 5.
Ignorance is the field on which all imperfections thrive, whether dormant, superficial, sporadic, or sustained. Ignorance is the conviction that what is impermanent is permanent, that what is impure is pure, that what is painful is pleasant, and that what is the non-self, the ego, is the true self. Ignorance is the field on which all imperfections thrive, whether dormant, superficial, sporadic, or sustained. Ignorance is the conviction that what is impermanent is permanent, that what is impure is pure, that what is painful is pleasant, and that what is the non-self, the ego, is the true self.
I'm going to try to bolt through this one really quickly because we have a lot more material to cover. But basically, first talking about the dormant karma or the latent karma, meaning, as he describes in here, if you're born in a lifetime and you have a desire for deep sea fishing, but you're born in a desert in that life, you're not going to be able to fulfill that particular karma in that lifetime. So it lays dormant. It may never have any particular influence in that particular life. But I was thinking in this age of Dwapara, with all the travel and globalization and the world becoming smaller, I came all the way from South America to find this path and end up with Master and with Swami here at Ananda. So, we come from all over. So there's less of a tendency in this time probably to experience the dormancy, at least in this context. Superficial karmas are the ones that Master talks about when ecstasy comes, everything goes. And so, you don't have to deal with every single little one. You have to go for liberation, and then a lot of the little desires, the little karmas, they just sort of get rushed away in the river of our ecstasy. When that finally comes, I'm reminded of the mother of the teenager that I actually saw maybe 15 years ago or so. A group of teenagers came up from Ananda village with a few of their parents, and one of them was chewing gum, and the mother was reading her the riot act for chewing gum. And I thought, in this day and age, when there's so many things teenagers can get into, you want to pick your battles, Forget the gum chewing. That will ease away with time. So those are the superficial karmas. Sporadic, those are the occasional desires that we might have periodically. They're not really strong, they're not really intense, they just come now and then. And I'm reminded of, as yogis even, wanting to let your hair down and relax and watch a movie or something like that. And it's okay to give in to those a little bit, but you can also maybe up them a notch spiritually and do it with friends and watch things that are a little more uplifting. That's something Swami used to do with us all the time, just invite us over to watch uplifting things rather than, go out on the town kind of a thing. You can transcend it. But those are the kinds of karmas that you can actually try to, deny their fulfillment is the way he puts it. Whereas sustained karmas, these are the really strong ones that grip us. The example that comes to my mind is like Kumar in the chapter in autobiography in my master's hermitage, that intelligent young man who had such good karma to be such a close friend with Swami Sri Yukteswar, and then to end up having to go back out in the world because he just couldn't hold it, he couldn't listen, the desire was too strong. Sri Yukteswar said the world would have to be his teacher rather than his guru. When those karmas are so strong, then those are the ones that we usually have to go through the hard lessons of life in order to transcend them, eventually become tired of them. And I'm gonna leave it at that. Let's go to 10 and 11.
All these obstacles, attractions, aversions, etc., can be removed by the perception of their first cause, the ego. In the active state, those obstacles can be destroyed by meditation. All these obstacles, attractions, aversions, etc., can be removed by the perception of their first cause, the ego. In the active state, those obstacles can be destroyed by meditation.
In this section, he describes the need for us to choose our battles, to choose the ones that we think we can win, even if they're just the little ones, and take a step at a time and do battle with ego, but do it on the level where we can be victorious. Don't try to go for the big ones right out the gate. It's just too difficult. But when you win little battles at a time, you gain the strength in time to take on the bigger battles. And the fact that in meditation, if we really, really get truly still in our minds become like a clear reflection inside. Introspection becomes more and more clear. And we can see, as he describes in this reading section about his own, Swami Kriyananda, about his own pride of intellect. And at a certain point in meditation that became so clear to him that he just shouted at his ego for that to go away, to never come back again with all his might. And he never felt the grip of that particular challenge again. But it was in meditation that, in the complete stillness, that he was able to see that reflection clearly in order to be able to address it. And so that does come with time and with practice. Okay?
Good. So, we're going to take a pause now. And I have my list of questions I sent to you, but I'm not going to use those unless we need to use those. So I'd like to open it up, and what we propose that if you have something you'd like to offer, don't just shout it out, but somehow get our attention, and then give us a moment to respond or not, and before we keep opening it up. So we want to do this like the meditation, in other words, not just like ping pong balls in a billiard thing, but just quietly put it out there, give us a moment, and then go from there. Let's just see how it works. So I'd like to open that up. Who's going once, going twice?
Want to start with Karen's?
Well, it's on a stanza we didn't cover, so that might be a bit awkward.
Okay.
You know what I mean. So anyone have something? Mr. George.
Yeah, I have a question, comment on ego transcendence. And so the reading I think Masha did was about giving the credit to God. And I remember reading somewhere in the teachings about giving the blame to God as well when things don't go as well as we would like. And the question really is how does one actually practice that? Because it seems to be easier to give away the credit. But there's a tendency when things don't go well to beat ourselves up, to blame ourselves. But at the same time, we ought to be giving that up to God as well.
We need to repeat that for the...
You want me to repeat it?
I do, yeah.
Okay, because I can hear better. Is that okay? One of the readings on ego transcendence was about giving the credit to God, and George's question is, does the opposite, giving the blame to God, also hold true? In fact, he's read that in some aspect of the teaching, and he's wondering, isn't that harder to do, and how do we go about doing that? Giving the blame also to God. Seems really easy to me now.
Okay. So, Padma, do you have
No,
anything
you
to
go
say?
ahead. You go
No, I
first.
don't have anything to say. I'm ready to listen to someone else respond to that. If somebody would like to contribute to George's statement. No? Masha, come on.
I remember reading this.
Stand up, Marcia.
I remember reading the same thing that you were referring to, and evidently Master said God really likes that. So I just think, well, if God likes it, let's do it, right? And that helps me.
So God likes it, so I to him. Yeah, Rashmi.
I think when you give the credit to God, then with practice and time, it's easier to give the blame too. So just one weighs out the other.
So give the credit to God and then gradually get used to the blame. I have to say I'm the other way around, but okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So that means if you mess up, you can say, you messed up, God. If I mess up, I'm not on purpose, but if I mess up, can I just say, well, that's your fault?
That's a really good question.
First repeat it. Fine.
Yeah. She's saying, does that mean that when I mess up, I say, it's your fault, God? You just pass it on to God. You know, Master was talking about, in context, he was saying, God, you put me here. You know, it's your fault I'm in this position and in this ego right now that I have to deal with. And so you got to help me. You got to help me through this. I don't think it's as much about passing the buck of our mistakes to God. We have to own the fact that we've made mistakes, but we're not those mistakes. The point is, we're not that either. That's what he's really trying to say. We're not our glory, and we're not our weaknesses. We're none of those. We're the perfect reflection of God. We're the soul. And so remembering that God is the doer in all of these things. But it's not like shifting the responsibility so that we can just keep messing up, you know. Does that make sense?
Bruce.
It's kind of like if you gave it all to God in the first place, when you're first doing whatever act, you know, if it's successful, then it's God's glory. And if it's not successful, then it's also God's glory. And it starts at the beginning.
Starts at the beginning.
It's not your ego doing something, and then when it doesn't work out, you say, well, now it's your problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If you give it to God first, that's a good point. Masha.
I do think that when Master said that, he said it kind of with a sense of humor.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's what helps me as well. For instance, when I'm meditating and struggling, which I do a lot, sometimes I just say, okay, Master, you do it for me. And then at the end of my meditation, I say, well, you didn't do so well. and I do think of that line, God likes that. It's not that I'm putting off my responsibility on it, but it's just helpful to have a sense of humor with that as well.
Mm-hmm.
I am trying my best, right? And I think they're talking about a situation where you're doing your very, very best, and it doesn't come out. Just, you can say jokingly to God, okay, well, you didn't do so well. And that's helpful to me anyway.
All of it has to do with the degree to which we identify the self with the actions of the ego, and finding a level of detachment, whether it be our mistakes or our successes, not seeing ourselves as the doer. Because in either case, taking credit, taking blame, we really auger down. We either beat ourselves to death over our mistakes, or we strut about like a rooster when we do things well, or that we have a particular talent that puts us above other people, poor them, and so forth. So it's a question of the degree of identification with those actions or tendencies, good, bad, or indifferent.
Karen, you had a comment?
did. It's interesting that I'm told that in the Vedas there are all kinds of things that you can do if you want to have power over your enemy, or all kinds of other things. There are various mantras and stuff you can do. And the theory is not that these are things we should aspire to, but that whatever you do it with God. And I think it's in that spirit, maybe, that we give our failures.
Mm-hmm. That we were doing it with God to begin with. Yeah, as Bruce was saying too.
Okay, I vote we move on. Any other topics, thoughts, and so forth? Yes, Mr. John.
One of the questions in your thing sent out has to do with mass karma, and basically you asked all the millions that suffered under Stalin, Hitler, did all those men, women, children, did they deserve the same karma, or was there a mass karma attached to them? They somehow generate or earn for themselves for their past action. And I don't really understand mass karma very much. And just another way to put it that might be more close, it's more understandable, I think. I had a professor in school once that was talking about this pilot that a commercial plane they were flying, and the plane crashed with 300 people aboard, and he or somebody heard about it, was ticketed for that plane and got off, and jokingly the guy that got off after the crash said he didn't think it was his karma to die, but he thought it might be the pilot's karma, and he didn't want to be in the plane when the pilot had that karma. So how much we bound in with something generated by a third party, be it Hitler or Stalin or whatever?
I think that's a question, but I think the question is to what degree or how does it work that we get involved with a karma greater than our own that isn't strictly speaking our own. Is that somewhere in the ballpark? You know, Swami doesn't really address that in his example, does he? He simply states, quoting Master, that the karma of both Hitler and Stalin goes beyond just their own actions because of the fact that many, hundreds of thousands, really, millions in the case probably of Russia, people had to cooperate with their order, their respective orders, and therefore there would be, you know, karma not entirely on their particular shoulders. In writing the question that I did, I addressed a question, for better or worse, and it's beginning to feel worse, that Swami didn't address, which is, what about those poor people? And was it their karma? Because Swami makes a rather bold statement, and I don't know that he's intending to make a bold statement, but in his efforts to be succinct on the law of karma in that section, he says rather simply that we must have hurt somebody in a past life or at some time when we get hurt ourselves. So he doesn't really address the thing of mass karma, but most of you who have studied around here have heard things like John's excellent example of the person who got off the airplane or the person who didn't get in the elevator and all those sorts of things. And the explanation we hear is that sometimes a person's individual karma and aura and magnetism is simply not strong enough to overcome a larger mass karma. For example, I'm Jewish. I'm not Jewish. Okay. He's Jewish. You're Jewish. And there you are in Germany. Now, I've often mused, my goodness, they're not dummies. They knew more or less what was coming. But inertia takes place. You hope for the best. Some people got out. Some people saw the handwriting on the graffiti on the wall. It couldn't have been hard to see. But you do nothing. So you succumb if you will, as people do in crises in the towers. Studies have shown that under a crisis situation, the vast majority of people look like deer in the headlight. But there's a certain psychological individual personality type who in crisis rises to the occasion and moves. Has that chakra here of calmness, who perceives the situation, perceives the solution. They're not necessarily normally all that intelligent or courageous or any such thing, but somehow they see and they act, whereas most people freeze. So, it's not addressed in the book, but that is how I've heard Swami speak of those situations. How could it be the karma of that many millions of people to die in that way? I mean, to some degree, it has to be, but this concept of mass karma clearly injects a whole different reality to the situation that is inexplicable so far as any of us can see.
Yeah, that's what I remember too, just that the individual's karma isn't strong enough on their own, their aura isn't strong enough to withstand the power of the mass karma that's happening, so they get sucked up into it.
I think his interesting point, though, was more about Hitler and Stalin, wasn't it? That they weren't personally, egoically, or as a soul, necessarily 100% responsible for all the actions done under their command, so to speak, which is an interesting, it's not unlike that prior discussion about George giving the blame and credit. Now, there's something bigger going on in these situations. We participate in a vibration of consciousness that we do not originate. We tune our radio dial to cruelty, and we become cruel. We tune the radio to anger or revenge, and we become those states of consciousness. How is it that quiet little mousy kid next door becomes a serial killer? Do you see what I mean? We all can tune into those channels given the right karmic matrix, and we succumb to that to some
Jamana?
degree. The word that needs to be addressed is that word deserved. I'm right here.
Oh.
Deserved, because that's the question. Did they deserve to die in that way? And I think we can't say that, really. They just didn't have the magnetism to overcome getting caught. So it's because deserve implies punishment, and that's where people get it.
I don't know. It's just a word. We deserve what we get. I don't know that we can deny that, but we're not what our bodies, and we're bigger than those things. So we may not deserve it in the sense that I killed somebody in the last lifetime, so I'm going to get killed, but I mean, can we say at the same way that it's not our karma? No. So, I think deserve is a misleading word because it implies something we don't intend to say, so I just erase it. Yeah.
Rashida.
I grew up in the Orient, and one of the most difficult things I had to face was when to intervene and when not to. Giving an example of the monk that set himself on fire because he was protesting something, maybe in Vietnam or Thailand or whatever. And I was told that if we went and doused out the water and saved him, and then he becomes like a paraplegic or whatever his circumstances are, that was wrong. That could be wrong because we're interfering with the karma that somebody was trying to work out for themselves. So the most difficult thing is, for me, is when you rescue and when you interfere. When is it interfering? And when are you really helping somebody?
Wow, that's a big one. Can you repeat that?
Whew. Well, she said that growing up in the Orient, the biggest question that she had to deal with was, when do you interfere with another person's karma versus letting them work out whatever their karma is? And she cited the example of a monk who sets himself on fire in protest or something. Do you go and douse that fire and then he becomes a crippled person because he's half burnt? Or do you allow the fire to consume him because that was his intention? Or do you interfere with that?
Wow.
Whew.
Rashmi, you've got a good solution to this.
As for what I would do, it's like, his karma is whatever he did to himself, that's different. But would I be able to live with myself if I didn't do anything about it and just sat there and did nothing? Then if that answer is no, I would have to do something about it. It's my karma, it's my dharma to do something about that. And if after that he's a paraplegic, that wasn't my karma that brought it to him. So that's how I think about it. I don't know if it's right or wrong.
Rashmi says she would be inclined to get the bucket of water. Nivritti.
The human body is considered, the biggest blessing that we have, and to take our life is the greatest sin. And so it seems to me like somehow he's been misled in terms of really, you don't take your own life. That is not right. So he's somehow been misled, and I think that if, it would be helpful for someone, just as, Rashmi said, if we could help him, I think it would be the right thing to do. That we should do whatever we can, to have him live, if that's possible,
Okay.
for him as well as us.
So Nivritti has a second bucket of water. John.
I had a client a few years ago that was older, sick, and in poor health, and she chose to use the death of dignity suicide law. And I know her pretty well, and I was, I have the same feeling we do karmically that, it's not good for someone to take their own life, it's bad karma. But I don't know if I could have talked her out of it anyway, but I chose not to try it because it's what she wanted to do. And number one, my advice, my role as an attorney is to support unless I see as criminally wrong, something like that. But I think I do the same thing with anybody. Unless there's something really close, and even then I'm not sure I do it. I talk to them and have them explain why they want to do it, but in most cases I think we're more there to support what they do.
Okay. Did you get all that? I don't know what that law's called, but when you take your own life in a legal way, for medical reasons, presumably, I suppose. Terminally ill.
They don't have depression.
Right. Okay, so John's keeping his bucket. So,
Justin.
Is there another way to look at this? In the same way, we give the praise and blame to God, but retain the responsibility. As individuals, we are all part of the one self, and what another may do, we are also responsible in a global sense, regardless of whether it's my personal karma or not, because it's part of the largest self, that karma. The mass karma, not as produced by, any particular individual, but as carried by everyone. And so, in that sense, I may not personally have done something that makes this happen, but I am still part of everyone, and I am responsible for it. And so I can participate in other people's karma in that sense.
well, rather than continue to vote about buckets here, which wouldn't take us anywhere meaningful, I don't think, I think what we're perceiving is it depends on what you feel is right. And as I think Rashmi put it, right for you. Okay? There's no way to discern in an objective way what the right thing is in this excellent example that Rashida gives. You have to act with integrity and according to what you feel is right. I don't think there is a right answer to a question like that. It has to come from within you. And honestly, I don't think you will ever know in such a strange circumstance what was right or not right, unless the monk years later thanked you and you threw the bucket of water on him, but I'm not even sure about that. So, yeah, it's an unanswerable question. It can only be answered from inside. I don't know that we can go further with something like that, but it's a great question. Okay, yeah, Martha.
This has to do with several of what you've read.
Okay, let's just do one.
The ones that kind of relate are yoga doesn't free us from our karma, really. Yoga doesn't oblige us to suffer, really. What then is the secret to overcoming karma? Well, my question is, if one is experiencing, say, difficulty or pain in the present lifetime, and assuming that getting the message of all these teachings to accept it, move through it with grace, and all the stuff that we've been learning about, knowing that thought directs energy, and that most of us are trained in Kriya, and Kriya is supposed to move us through our karma faster, is it possible, when one is aware of a situation that's most likely karmic, to dedicate the Kriyas that you do to that specific karma in order to move through it faster?
Okay, good question. Can you use Kriya in respect to moving through specific karmic challenges? Very good question. Yeah. Alma, you have any comment before we open this up?
Go ahead.
Okay, I don't. I mean, it's a great question, but I want to hear what somebody else has to say.
Rashmi.
Wait a minute. Somebody else. Anybody else? Rashmi's done 3 or 4 already. Yeah.
I think that that's an excellent way of focusing on doing the karma, to use Kriya to focus on it. Absolutely excellent.
Thank you.
Okay. He's voting yes. Bruce.
In a broader sense, I mean, you could do, the Master talked about doing Kriyas for some other people, you know, and sometimes he'd say, well, do Kriyas for me or whatever. So I would think that on a microcosm that you could probably you could just try and see how it works.
I had the same thought, and I remember hearing Swami talking about that too, doing Kriya for his mother. And
I'm not aware of that, or if I was, I've forgotten that. But so there is Master talks about doing Kriya for others?
yeah, I mean, it's not something you do like daily and constantly, but occasionally, when an occasion comes up specifically, yeah, I know I've done it for my children.
I mean, I think, Martha, what you are sort of asking includes, is it good, right, whatever, to try to move through one's karma more quickly? Is that kind of what you're asking? Using Kriya.
A present, current situation that is known and seems to be karmic. Is it possible, is my question.
Oh, is it
those
possible?
With more experience. Is it possible to dedicate your Kriyas or direct them to that situation in order to move through? Not all karma.
I mean, typically what we do is we do our practice, and then we sit in the silence after the practice. And then after that, if we have something towards the end that we want to offer up for a solution, that's when we offer it, because then we've neutralized and we've become still. So typically that's the process. You don't typically think first, now I'm going to do the next 12 Kriyas for this, person that's hurting me all the time, or something, and trying to break that situation and break through that karma. Typically we do our practice, sit in the silence, and then we offer up that situation at the end for a superconscious solution, for a divine solution. But I think there are occasions where we can, I'd say, where we can focus on something and offer it in that way, it would make sense to me if it's serious that one could.
Is there an underlying question whether or not it's spiritually right to do something other than simply accept your karma? Or is your concern that it may not be right based on some of these statements? Okay.
Was putting it out there as, do you believe that it's possible?
Oh, well, I wouldn't do Kriya if I didn't think it was possible. Right.
Being aware of the fact that the master has said
Uh-huh.
to do a Kriya for someone else or something in those specific situations. But it seems to me, in what the Treta Yuga learning and with the thought directing energy, that it would be possible.
Yes.
To direct Kriyas to a certain.
That's the promise.
Okay.
Karen has a comment.
Karen.
Oh, I just seem to remember a Kriya conversation where Swami actually mentioned that you can do, if there's some, energetic blockage or something like that, you can specifically offer it up. So my interpretation of your question is, yes, it can be done on occasion.
Okay, so we move on. Somebody else.
Why is that not a form of praying for oneself?
I couldn't hear the question.
Why is that not a form of praying for oneself? Swami talked about he never prayed for himself.
Yeah, that's why I asked Martha that question. I wanted to know if she was coming from that space. I don't know that I can answer that. I don't know. Anybody? Rashmi, come on. All right, shoot.
I just to say it, the kinds of things that Martha was talking about was praying for understanding or a solution to a karmic problem. You've got some kind of serious karma that you're dealing with, and you're trying to find the resolution for that. You're trying to mitigate or cleanse that karma, and you want answers on how to do that. That's different.
Very clever, Padma. That's skirting the issue, right, lawyer?
No, it's not. No, it's not. That's different than saying, heal me from this. It's trying to bring understanding to it.
You say so.
Because using all the other tools that were given and taking responsibility for it, in the same way, can we just move a little faster through it? But then also that question of whether praying for you, I think it was Riemann, something that you said maybe the last class related to the not praying for oneself and that sort of thing. I remember you saying something like, well, that was Swami's karma or place. It's not necessarily where I am.
That's right, yeah.
And so I took from that.
But in fact, he, even in this book, in this these chapters we just read, he says the same thing again about not praying for himself. Right. And then he's saying, of course it's up to the individual, but it's best not to think of the I, which is his way of saying it's really better not to. But praying for oneself and doing Kriya, where we're trying to liberate ourselves.
It's liberation.
It's liberation that we're asking for. We're
That's
not.
Right. We have one. Yeah. We have right to one prayer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Otherwise, we wouldn't even do Kriya.
Yeah. So yes, we do pray for ourselves.
Yeah.
Let's not split hairs here.
Yeah.
Yes, we do. It's what we pray for is the question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good one. Okay, I want another home run. That was good. We've all had good questions. So, yeah.
This
Robin.
ties in with what we've been talking about. But when Lahiri said, any problem you have, just practice Kriya.
Yeah.
And doesn't that tie in? The stanza that you just did, the 211. In the active state, those obstacles can be destroyed by meditation. And it seems to me that, especially when you first get on the path, you don't even know what the obstacles are. You don't even know all these subconscious tendencies you don't even know you have. You don't even know what you're trying to fight.
Yeah.
So, and so that's I always cling to when Lahiri said that. Just don't even worry about all the details. Just do your Kriya. And it'll all be revealed in time.
That's right.
And that to me is so comforting.
Yeah.
Because I don't have to understand it all. I just have to
do it.
Just do your Kriya. Right. Is that what they're saying? Is that what Patanjali's saying here? In this?
Yes.
Okay. So, that's a big comfort.
In other words, our path, and I'm not referring to Kriya necessarily specifically, though it includes Kriya, but the teaching of our path is that the solution not only to all of our problems, but all of our desires, lies in superconsciousness. And that the details are just details. Okay, this person might have an issue around money, this one around health, etc. But to the degree we offer ourselves into the silence, into God's presence, all the different ways of saying that, and to actually achieve, to the degree we achieve that, our problems will work themselves out. Krishna says, I make permanent your gains and render permanent your gains and make good your deficiencies. And that is our... The problem is that it's challenging to achieve superconsciousness, and we only meditate a few minutes a day, relative to the day's activities. So we have a lot of other work to do, too. And then there are some karmic things that we have that we simply can't ignore. Not that meditating is ignoring them, but, if we have an anger habit, we need to work on that. If we have a gluttony habit, we need to work with that, and so forth. In addition to meditation. So it's not either or, but that is the teaching. And ours is a wonderful teaching in that way, because it offers such hope.
So just to clarify what she's saying, we don't have to fully understand why Kriya works. We just know that if we keep doing it, we'll get the benefits of it.
Yes.
Because, being doing without, to me it makes, I don't understand. It's like somebody telling me to stand on my head and act like a monkey. I'm like, okay, I'll do it. I don't know why this is working, but I'll do it. I don't understand the whole... But I just want to know that if I keep doing this,
yes,
I'll get to where I'm supposed to, but I have to understand and I'll get the benefits of it,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Well, yes, but he does give us in-depth explanations of why it works, so we're not just sort of blindly doing something. And I think the point Robin brought up is a little bit different. The point that she brought up is, I don't really have to understand what all my challenges are and my own tendencies, samskars are. I just know that Kriya and meditation is the answer to it all. So I'm just going to do that, and then my own nature will melt away into spirit. It will, all these samskars, all these knots will become undone through my meditation and Kriya practice. That's what you're saying. And Lahiri, in the context you're quoting him, was saying when people came to him with problems, Kriya is your answer. Meditation is, it all lies in Kriya. So even when people are articulating what their problems are, that's still the answer, is Kriya. But you're saying it's comforting to know that I don't really need to know why I'm such a mess. I just need to know that I can transcend it through these practices. And so I do it. And that's really what you're saying too.
And that's
model that we have to understand all our complexes.
Right.
Get all immersed in that.
Right.
Yeah. In fact, in that stanza, he says the word active, and he was just describing the four kinds of karma: dormant, superficial, sustained, and sporadic. And in the case at hand, he was dealing with an active issue in the sense of ego, and those dormant karmas, until they're activated, or that's the Jivan Mukta can work on those things. But we can't worry about the things that are dormant. We can only worry about the things that are active and present to our consciousness. And that's where meditation will have its most direct effect, is in the present tense with your present actions. So I thought it was a worthwhile point.
Yeah.
However, how are we doing? Well, we're doing good. Those are great. What else?
Is there one more?
Got time for one more zinger. No? No Hainava? Gadzooks. They fell asleep on you, Padma, while you were away.
Are we going to see you all at Kriya on November 9th? Yes, yes.
9th?
November 9th. 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 Good. And just to say it while we have a captive audience, the weekend of the 22nd or so when Anandi comes, especially for all of you, I really encourage you to attend all three of her things. Friday night she'll give a talk at East West on Bharat's behalf with Riemann and I on the Om book that Bharat put together. And then on Saturday here in the temple, she'll do a workshop on karma, perfect topic. And on Sunday, she'll give the Sunday service. So I encourage you to take advantage of these visiting ministers when they come, because it's precious satsang, it's precious time together.
Did the clipboard on Kriya make its way? Okay, great,
Yeah.
excellent. Well, we can end a minute or two early, can't we?
Okay.
So let's have a moment of silence. I realize the reason Master and Swami give us the visualization of the hollow tube of the spine is an affirmation that it is hollow. Mm-hmm. And there are no vrittis in there, nivrittis. So visualize that hollow tube, free and clear, and the energy of bliss and kundalini rising towards liberation. Be a jivan mukta in this lifetime. Om Shanti Shanti. Amen. Okay. I think the discussion worked, don't you? It was good? Great. Okay. We'll carry on.
Great questions tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.